after that brief break, where we discuss the wins of Habib and what we can learn from his sportsmanship and dawah as young people. Yeah, we're gonna be heading over now. Akil will introduce our next guest, and so please stay tuned and be inspired by this Motivation Monday slot of Shack Attack. So, yeah, without further ado, Akil, take it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening. And I must say, I am, for the first time, I think, in my radio career, I have slight butterflies. You know, I remember very, quite a long time ago, probably about 14 or 15 years ago, um, reading about Sibusiso Vilane's story. And at the same time, there was this very odd program on TV about climbing mountains, and one of the mountains they were climbing was Everest. And then reading Sibusiso's biography and his story and how he's climbed this mountain twice. And ever since then, it's kind of been a dream for me, and it's been a challenge of me trying to pursue my own physical goals and my own mini Everests and so on, all inspired by this one great man. And more importantly, but this evening we have this incredible opportunity to interview him. So, um, Sibusiso, to introduce you, you have climbed the highest mountain in every continent. You've completed what's known as the Explorers Grand Slam, which is um, the seven summits and then going to the North and the South Pole. You then climbed Everest. So you climbed twice, once in 2003 and once in 2005, and then wrote a book called To the Top from Nowhere. So really, really an incredible story, and it's lovely to be chatting to you this evening.
Well, thank you very much indeed, and you are very kind to have me. I appreciate the opportunity. Yes, you're very correct. I've climbed in all 7 continents. I've been to the North Pole and to the South Pole, ran marathons. And if you ask me why, I won't answer that question because I really have no idea why I do these things. But there's something within me that drives me to find myself at this events or up on a slope of a mountain, and then that's it. Really, it has just compelled me in a much more way, in a way that I don't even fully understand. I won't tell you where it all comes from, but yeah, it has happened.
I think in our lives we find ourselves having small goals and big goals, and often comparing them to the climbing of mountains. Even in our faith, we have the month of Ramadan, and people speak about the 30 days, and getting to the 15th day, you reach the peak, and you glide off to the end of the month, where you can eat in the daytime again. And here you actually went out and did that. You actually many times, and it's a very personal journey, I would imagine. What sort of lessons have you drawn as your life has progressed? Being out there on your own, often with other people perhaps, but ultimately with your own, your own self, in your own mind, your own body, your own spiritual self as well, and going out there and achieving these things that you set out to do.
There's a lot that I've learned about myself and about life itself, about nature, about other people, that I've been able to learn from my expeditions. But the biggest for me was learning more about myself, really, because even though I had the confidence and the self-belief that I could climb Mount Everest, you all sort of have this state of being in some doubt of some sort up until you've done stuff. Only then you realize that, yes, what you've always believed about yourself is possible. So it took me the 2 months of being on the slopes of this mountain with other people that I learned a couple of lessons. One was, you've got to be ambitious, and you've got to dream beyond your limitations, because it is not where you come from, it is not who you are, it is not where you grow up that matters. The biggest question you need to ask yourself is how far you want to go in life. And I learned through my experiences that actually, as human beings, we will never fully know, we never know our full potential. We might lie to ourselves to say, I know my limitations, but that's pure lie, because my experience and discovery is that if I was to compare a human being's capability to something that's elastic, you can never fully stretch that elasticity to its end. So that's how far we can go in life. So it's a question of how do you tap into that space where you believe that you have no limits, and then once you get there, then you become unstoppable, like I have, because I identified with that when I was on the summit of Everest. Like, you know what, you have got what it takes to achieve anything, but you shouldn't um, deceive yourself to say that it will be easy. It will always be as tough. It will always be as hard. It will always be as difficult. There will be the ups, there will be the downs, there will be the setbacks along the way. But if you don't give up, you will stand at the top at the end of it all, after all the struggles and overcoming those obstacles along the way. So I learned quite a lot in that. I learned that if it is a big goal that you can achieve, you mentioned it quite well, that I might have been on this mountain personally as a personal journey, but I had people with me that were supporting me, that were in my company. I learned that if it is a big goal that you are trying to achieve in your life, it can only happen when you partner with people, when you collaborate with people, when you work with people. So these are the things that we learn when we go to expeditions, particularly mountains. They teach you these things which we read about, which we hear speakers talk about. Like, you've got to have a team, but you've got to have a team that believes in you, a team that has the faith, a team that you have faith in them, and you believe in them, and only then can you stand the chance to work with them and summit a mountain. And I learned that it is, when it comes to teams and people working together, it is not about where they come from, really. That makes them to work together. It is about sharing that common vision, or that common goal, that common objective. And when they realize that they all want to reach the one mountain, the one summit, therefore their attitudes are such that they are willing to work together. So these are the things I've learned along the way, which I apply every day when I want to work with people, because I was introduced to the fact that it is actually a choice. You choose to work with people, or you choose to not to work with people. But the only reason you choose to work with people, which then forces you and them to adapt to each other, is because you sharing the same common vision or common goal. So these are much more what life is about, really, or running a business is about. You've got to have people who believe in what you are trying to achieve.
Sibu, I think the one thing which we find so inspiring about you is that it's not just a case of, oh, I've done the thing and now I'm done. You know, to most people, it would be, I need to finish my degree and then start working, and that's my mountain. You know, the great challenge of my life is done. Or to you, it could have easily been, well, I've climbed Kilimanjaro and now I'm done. Or I've done Everest once and now I'm done. But there's this sense that you constantly want to push the envelope, and I think that's such an important kind of skill to have if you want to have a life which is about growth and development, and you know, constantly striving for something beyond yourself. And so the question I wanted to ask is, how do you is that just a natural mindset which you've always had, or is it a mindset you've cultivated over time? And if so, you know, how is it that we as people in general can start cultivating that mindset?
Well, I must say that it is a mindset that I've developed over the years. It is not something that I grew up having, or understanding in its deeper meaning. But over the years that I've been embarking on these experiences, I'll make an example of Mount Everest, because I had only climbed Kilimanjaro and then I went straight to Everest, which is the wrong way to do it, because people climb more mountains before they even think about Mount Everest. So you would have looked at it at that moment to say, look, yeah, I have come from from my background, and I've climbed the ultimate, the highest in the world. And then you would ask yourself the question, what is there to climb? And most people actually ask me the same question, what is there to conquer? You've conquered it, you've conquered all. But the attitude or the mindset then that we grow when we go to mountains is such that the mountain that you are currently climbing right now prepares you for the next one. So whether it's an Everest, whether it is that final year of your degree or your metric or university or whatever, it prepares you for your next mountain. So the attitude or mindset around that is, what will that mountain be then? Because when you achieve the summit of that particular mountain, you've got to look beyond that, because we say it is never a destination, it's never an end. You don't arrive and say, I'm here and then that's it, because if that happens, then that means you don't have a life, you don't have a future. But we know that success is a journey, therefore it has to be a journey of multiple goals coming along and multiple objectives coming along. And that is what has kept me going for the last, nearly 20 years now, since I started climbing. Because every now and then when I reach the summit of a mountain, I know it confirms how capable I am, and therefore I take that capability and the know-how to get there to apply it onto the next mountain that I then climb. But it is all a mindset that I developed when I had to look at what had happened and try to summarize things. I did ask myself the question, but why would I want to keep on doing something else when I've climbed the ultimate, the Mount Everest? I mean, who wants to climb another mountain after that? Then it was when I came to understand that no, the reason you summited Everest was purely to prove that you've got what it takes to do it. And then for you've learned what it takes to do it, then you take that and apply it to even much more bigger goals. It cannot be as ambitious as it was, but the one unique thing about the mountains, I will even go back to the 7 summits, is that you can't compare them. So that is to say, every goal you set will always have its own way to challenge you. It will want you to focus on it specifically without too much dwelling on what you've done somewhere else, because you'll find that they're all different. And therefore, I mean, there are many people that will say to you, I have climbed K2, which is the most feared mountain in the world. I've climbed Everest. And then they come and get defeated on Mount Kilimanjaro. And then you ask yourself, how is that possible? It's because each challenge has got its unique way to really challenge you. Therefore, you don't rely on what you've done in the past or before. You've got to focus on what you're doing then, which for us, it is very re-energizing, because it just makes you aware that you've got to fully prepare, you've got to fully plan for everything. You can't just haphazardly get up in the morning and go. It's a mindset that you develop over time to realize that that is what it takes to do it. And if then people were, how do you then tap into that space? It's about really knowing that it is a journey, and success is never an end, it is never a destination, and what you have achieved prepares you for the next goal that you need to set for yourself. So the mindset then is for you to always look beyond your achievements, because you know the biggest enemy to all people is just achieving the goal that they set, which in a way or the other, it says that you haven't set it so big enough, because the goal that stretches you, that makes you grow, is the one that you really take a long time to achieve. And when you achieve that one, you would have grown as a person, and you become much more better as into who you are. And then you take that and apply it to the next one. So we can never sit back and say, I've done it and then I don't have anything else. There's so much to do. You've got to come up with more ideas, be innovative, and think about other things. I mean, when I summited Everest, I never knew about the 7 summits. I came back home and I said, what's out there to climb? And I was told, there's a thing called the 7 summits where you climb all the highest mountains in each continent. I said, brilliant. So I went and focused on that goal, and it took me a great deal of time. It took me about 2.5 years to climb 5 mountains that remained out of the 7. And then from that, I thought, well, now you've done the 7 summits, what other things you need to. Then I was told about the Explorers Grand Slam, which is summiting Everest, 7 summits, and North and South Pole, and all of those. So you constantly have to reinvent yourself and find other ideas and keep on going, because then otherwise you sit back and then you have nothing. But then life will challenge you to keep going. If it is a journey, then you've got to have goals to look forward to every time you achieve another one. And that is the mindset we need to achieve. You can never arrive. A goal that is achieved is it is a determinant of the next one that you need to achieve.
Sibusiso, we understand that when you went on this journey, initially you were the first Black South African or African person to do so. How important is being first, or was it at the time, for yourself and for people that were waiting for you to come home? And of course, the euphoria that lasted after that took place. What did that mean for you? What did that mean for your family, for the community that you came from, for the country in general? And what lesson is there to learn in that for others seeking to be the first in doing whatever they feel like hasn't been done yet, in the community or in the country, for that matter?
Look, I mean, to be a first to do anything or to achieve any big goal, really, that makes history is very profound to a person, and to me, it is very humbling. And bearing in mind or reminding whoever might be listening or watching, that when I set off to try and climb Everest, I knew that there were not that many Black Africans or Black people in the world that have done this. But it wasn't the reason I really went to do that. What prompted me to go was when a friend had said to me, Everest had never been climbed by an African, regardless of color, since 1953 summit by Edmund Hillary, and this was in 1996, early 1996, because then that same year South Africa had a big expedition, which then got Cathy O'Dowd, who became the first African and South African to summit the mountain. So when my friend mentioned this, I said to him, look, I don't think that Africans can't do this. I think we can do it, but I think the biggest thing was that we can't afford to go overseas to climb mountains, because it would definitely not make sense to my mother or my grandmother, who is really struggling to put food on the table. Why would you want to pay for a ticket to go and climb a mountain? And when I said that comment, I didn't even know that it would take a person probably more than close to $1 million rands to sign up for an Everest expedition. So when he told me that that is the amount it will cost one to go, I said, you realize that is the reason. But when then he challenged me to say, if the money wasn't in the equation, would you do it? I said to him, I would want to do it because I just wanted to showcase our ability as Africans. I do believe that it doesn't matter in what sphere of operation we are. It could be in business, it could be in sport, it could be in adventure. I believe that we are equal to anybody and to any person. So for me, that was the message I wanted to share to the world. And the fact that then I became the first Black person in the world and the first African to do it was much more humbling and very profound, because when you are first, then anyone else can just follow you. There will never be another first in that space. And you occupy, that's a lifetime occupation, which is very important. In the fact that when you go on these things, you becoming a first will always linger with people, and that is what people will remember most of the time. But for me, the important part will still remain. It was an example of what Africans can achieve, and that was the message for my reason to go, and having able to achieve that, coming from an African background where up until the age of 26, I had not climbed a mountain. I'd never been interested to climb mountains. And then was after I met this guy in 1996, when I was 26 years old, that we started talking about it. And then when I was 33, I went to climb Everest. But for me, coming from that background, the message again to people is it doesn't matter where you start, it doesn't matter who you are, and it is never too late to start. Because if you look at it now, if you look at the list of things that I've been able to achieve from when I started making my mind around this is what I want to do and focused on, you can think that it has been my lifetime. No, it hasn't been my lifetime. It has only been the last 17 years that I've been able to achieve all these things. But it was just a matter of focusing on things and then just refusing to be sidetracked around that. But again, the one thing I just wanted that keeps me going is just to be able to inspire people to think beyond their limitations, because I think we limit ourselves by saying, I grew up in very rural South Africa. I grew up in a very poor family. Oh, I went to an ordinary school when others went to independent school. We do have this little blame game that we play instead of like opening our minds to the broader terms of what life is about, because life has to be a challenge for all of us, and we have got to earn it to have it. And that is what I've grown to accept and understand. It cannot just happen, but the majority of us think that things have to happen. You just think about them and then they happen as they are. No, you think about them, you dream about them, you action on them, you work hard, and then if you will fall and fail a number of times, but if you don't just let go, you keep trying, then you succeed. So it is important for anyone out there to think about that. They should never limit themselves, because as I said, I don't believe or think that we have limits. We only lie to ourselves to say we know our limits. No, we will never know our capabilities, because if you stretch yourself a little bit, it's amazing how far you can go and what you can achieve.
By that mindset. And I think it's of so much value to the rest of the world, because I think we live in a world where we're told that that you have a certain number of limitations, that you can only accomplish so many things in your life. And I think often, because of the way we're brought up, but because of the families, because of the social circumstances we have, you're told that you have a ceiling, and that often isn't. I think you're the greatest representation of the
Yeah,
fact that that
absolutely.
isn't the case. But Sibusiso, I wanted to around some of the challenges, independent challenges, which you face when you've been doing these expeditions. I think it's very easy for us to sit back and think, well, okay, this man went and climbed Everest, and to a lot of us, it just seems like a very cold hike, a hike in a lot of snow with an oxygen tank. It's much more than that, and I'm sure all of these challenges. So there were two specific questions which I wanted to ask. One is, when things get firstly, are there examples of when things get really hard? And how do you push through that? And the second question, which we'll touch on, once in a little bit, once we're done with this one, is conquering that sense of fear. I can imagine being at 8,000 meters where your body is literally eating itself up. It's called the death zone. Um, can't be a place where you feel secure in who you are, or where you are where this is a place of in the absence of fear. And so how do you face up to those little niggles, the things in your head which are telling you what happens if things go wrong now, or have I bitten off more than I can chew?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the examples of the hardships are many. The difficulties that you face when you go to those are many. I can put in at first the where we live, where we are in Africa. We don't compare to the Europeans who have got the resources like the Alps and the Himalayas where they go and train. So for you to be able to go there, you've got to have a big chunk of money, which I didn't have. And then as a result of that, I never got the time to go and train properly. I never trained for Everest, actually. I never had to go to climb another mountain. I relied on my natural physical ability, my physical exercise, which is running. And therefore, when I arrived at the base of the mountain, everything would be a shock in my system, because you will be sleeping at minus 15 and minus 20 or minus 30 in a little tent, and that was unbearable. So that was very hard. It was one of the things that puts you off the idea of being on the mountain, when you knew that here at home it was probably 38 plus, and then you're sleeping in a little tent which is caked up with icicles. And then physically, the terrain was uncompromising. I mean, it was just deadly. When you arrive at base camp, and then going towards the intermediate 3 camps or something. You are living death every second of your existence there. You know that you could die anytime, because there will be ice blocks that will collapse on you, avalanches, then the high altitude sickness itself. That was another. And then the time it takes. I mean, it takes 2 months to climb Everest. So that's very hard to think of it, that you will spend 60 days or 60 days plus sitting on the slopes of a mountain where every day is agonizing and every night a nightmare, when you know that people are having a good time at home. So there's a whole host of these difficulties that were there, really threatening to push you off. And what kept one going was the reason why we were there. If you didn't really know why you were there, why you were going through these difficult times, why were you enduring cold nights? Why were you enduring high winds that could blow you off the mountain? Why were you risking your life on a path which big ice blocks could collapse on you? If you didn't know that, if you had not articulated it clearly at home, it would have been easy for one to go. So it was very important for me to know the reason why, because it was when I knew why I was doing it that I was able to stand and overcame these challenges, which I knew then that they were only obstacles. But what kept me holding on was knowing that the summit was beyond these things. And if I was able to stay and fight through them all and defeat them, my chances would be enhanced to reach the top. Now, you are talking about the dead zone, and when it comes to fear, a question came up the other day saying, what was the most scary part or scariest part of the mountain for me? I'd never seen a crevasse in my life when I went to the slopes of Everest, and I was to cross hundreds of them. So every time I saw one, I just froze because I didn't know how to deal with them. And it was so frightening. And to be able to walk across some of them where you could just see that there was no end to the thing was just bottomless as you were walking along on those aluminium ladders that they put for you to walk on them. And obviously I fell into a crevasse one day, and it wasn't funny at all. But the biggest, how do you then overcome the fear around it? I will share a little story if time still allows. When I was looking at how the Sherpas operate on the mountains, and it is anywhere on a mountain, the guides become so used to the surface conditions, they become so used to the terrain that they don't have the fear. And because they don't have the fear, therefore they haphazardly do things. And at the end, they're the ones who get hard hit by accidents. They have the number of deaths on the mountain purely because they don't have that. So how do you accommodate fear? In my opinion, I will say this phrase, as they normally said, it is important to have the fear, because fear is your biggest friend. When you fear, you do things in a much more of a precautionary manner. You are very much aware that some accident might happen. And then when you are able to understand that, then you're able to overcome it, but don't overdo it. When I say don't overdo it, it's because people create this fear, whereas there are people that will say what fear stands for: false emotions or impressions appearing real. It is what you impress into your mind, and you think about these things, and then you see them happen, and that puts you off ideas. So you don't want to impress those. But if it is a fear of, like, you know that once you arrive in the dead zone, your body is already killing you. It's eating itself up because there's less oxygen. It's just important to be aware about that. But you don't create the impression that you are going to get to at Camp 4 in the dead zone and just die like that. You become aware so that you are able to do things right. And the best way to do it is just to walk as slow as possible, maximize on the time you need for acclimatization, and just listen to your body. And then you are able to understand that, you know what, if I feel this good at 8,000 meters, then I should be fine to go for the summit. And that is what happened when I went with my no oxygen attempt of Mount Everest. I arrived in the dead zone at 8,000 meters, and I felt sick. And that was being aware. So as a result of it, I turned back and walked away. But it wasn't because I was terrified or scared. I knew that if I forced myself to go on, I would have died. So fear is very important because it can be your guiding, it can be your guide to making the right decisions, just more like I did. But people tend to sort of chalk when it comes to fear, because they create these things that never happen, but they appear real because they're always frightened. I mean, the same. Many people always say, I have a phobia. I just look around a cliff and then I say, I'm scared of heights. I said, who tells you you are scared of heights? You've never been on heights. And people say, I won't climb a Kilimanjaro because I'm scared of heights. I'm like, but there are no heights on Kilimanjaro. But they've created this thing in their head. That is the biggest mistake. To overcome fear, don't think about things that are not real, because they will become real.
We've kind of run out of time. But in about 20 seconds, if the people who are listening could learn and take away one lesson from your life and all of the things you've accomplished, what would you want that thing to be?
The one lesson that I would like, which I share with everyone I meet, is that it is not about your background. It is not about who you are. It's about not about where you grew up. It's not about your social standing. The most important for you individually is how far you want to go in life. And the truth is, you can never know how far you can go. Therefore, never limit yourself.
I think we leave with that note, a challenge, a baton that's being given to each and every one of us listeners um, this evening to Sibusiso Vilane, that go out there, plan, and allow for the plans to change slightly, but don't let fear shackle you from actually progressing as a people, as individuals, and as a society. So we really appreciate this lesson that we've taken from you this evening, and we hope to speak to you in the future again.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
very
much
much
for making
indeed. I
time.
look forward to that opportunity again. I really appreciate everyone that has been listening. Thank you so much.
And that was Sibusiso Vilane inspiring us with his summits and walks and hikes and trips all across the globe. Something Aqeel, I hope that you've noted is that he was over 26 when he started this. So it's not too late for you to start. I can see that your eyes are wide
And I,
and that you might just lose out.
Shaks, I actually am going to have probably sometime next week an announcement. So I've taken on, as you know, I'm a little under the weather at the moment, but I've taken on I'm attempting to take on a challenge, which is a challenge I set myself in grade 10, which I promised I'd do before the age of 25. And I'm hopefully going to be doing this together with Salam Foundation to raise money for a specific cause. But that's all dependent on my health, and the challenge is supposed to be in about a month's time. And I will be giving you all more details and posting on my social media and so on in a little while. So I'm going to keep you guys in suspense for a bit. But for now, take it away with that competition. Someone's going to win a lovely trip away.
Yeah. So we'll speak to listeners in a few minutes. We'll close the session and then you'll stay tuned for the competition time with quite a few game reserve. We thank you for your listenership this evening. And we hope to leave inspired both by Khabib, by the dawah that he gives, by the words of Imam Ahmadi, and of course, Sibusiso Vilane. And that's it from us at Shack Attack. Assalamu alaikum. We will speak to you next week, inshallah.